the Deep Dive, where we explore your source material articles, research notes, and pull out the core insights you really need.
Okay there.
Today, we're definitely heading back to Middle-earth. We're going deep on the cinematic return with Peter Jackson's The Hobbit, an unexpected journey specifically through the lens of a pretty critical review.
Yeah, it's a fascinating one to look back on because, the project itself started with this built-in challenge. The Hobbit book is, well, it's fundamental, but it's light.
Right.
We have to remember Tolkien wrote it as a bedtime story for his son. It was much more cheerful, breezy, really, than Lord of the Rings. A direct prequel, yes, but tonally quite different.
And the film sticks to that basic quest, doesn't it? Bilbo Baggins, total homebody, gets swept up by Gandalf to join Thorin Oakenshield and his band of dwarves.
Yep, the classic setup. They're off to reclaim Erebor, the Dwarven Kingdom, from Smaug the dragon. Straightforward enough.
So our mission here is to unpack this specific review. It's from someone who clearly loves the original book, but became pretty skeptical watching the film unfold.
Exactly. The reviewer felt Jackson's, let's say, ambitious production choices might have swamped the story itself. We're digging into concerns about the film's length, the visual tech, even some casting choices.
And we have to kick off with the length. That seems to be the elephant in the room, or maybe the dragon in the mountain.
Ah, yeah. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes long. And that's just part 1 of 3.
Which immediately makes you think, doesn't it? How do you get 3 long movies out of that one book?
Precisely. And we know it wasn't always the plan. It was originally going to be 2 films, then it got expanded.
Ah, okay.
The reviewer definitely suspects the expansion might have been driven by, well, factors outside the story. Maybe MGM wanting to maximize the return, given the Lord of the Rings success.
Makes sense from a business perspective, maybe.
Perhaps. But if you stretch a relatively short book that far, you have to ask, how much of this runtime is essential story, and how much is, well, padding, even if it's high-quality padding?
And padding is exactly where the review gets quite pointed. The biggest issue raised is a lot of exposition in the first half. And crucially, the way the editing cuts between this exposition and the action sequences. It apparently breaks the flow.
Yeah, it feels less like one continuous journey and more like, well, like a series of stops and starts. Connected scenes, but not always smoothly flowing.
That stretching seems obvious right from the start with that opening scene they added. Older Bilbo and Frodo.
Right, played by Ian Holm and Elijah Wood, reprising their LOTR roles. It happens just before Fellowship kicks off.
A bit of nostalgic scene setting, maybe?
That was the idea, I think. But the reviewer found it not altogether necessary. They felt it didn't quite capture the Hobbit's later tone.
And they mention Elijah Wood specifically.
Yeah, described him as seeming a bit wooden, lacking that original spark Frodo had in the first trilogy. It felt like connective tissue that was maybe a bit forced.
Which then leads to this almost funny but telling comment from the reviewer, dreading a potential extended edition.
Calling the thought painful, yeah.
That says a lot, doesn't it? If the theatrical cut already feels overstuffed, the idea of more content is actually worrying.
It suggests the film felt like it was already pushing its limits, maybe including scenes more to set up Lord of the Rings than to serve the actual Hobbit story being told.
Well,
sense of obligation, perhaps.
Okay, so narrative issues aside for a moment, this is where it gets, well, almost unbelievable. The technical side, the viewing experience sounds like a disaster.
Yeah, this part is pretty wild. The reviewer actually saw the film twice. The first time was in standard 3D at 24 frames per second.
Not the fancy high frame rate.
No, apparently the 48 FPS version required a 50-mile drive, so they skipped that. But the standard 3D, that was the problem.
What went wrong?
Well, first off, the cinema used these weird yellow wraparound 3D glasses, not the usual Real D ones, and they were incredibly uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable how?
To the point they caused actual blisters on the noses of both the reviewer and their partner.
Blisters? From 3D glasses? You're kidding.
Nope. Physical pain caused by the viewing tech. That's not great.
Understatement. And that wasn't all.
No. On top of the discomfort, the screening was apparently interrupted repeatedly by people having to swap their glasses out because of battery failure.
Oh, come on. So you're trying to get lost in Middle-earth, but you're dealing with faulty hardware and a sore nose?
Exactly. Takes you right out of it. And the impact wasn't just logistical, it affected the visuals too.
How so?
This flawed 3D setup apparently spoiled Andrew Lesnie's cinematography. The reviewer mentioned scenes like the Eagle's sunset flight looking rather fake in 3D.
Really? That's a classic visual moment.
And the colors were noticeably muted. It wasn't just a bad projection. It seemed the 3D process itself was detrimental.
But they saw it again, right, in 2D.
Yes, and that's the key. Watching it in 2D confirmed how vibrant and beautiful the colors actually were meant to be.
So the 3D experience wasn't just uncomfortable, it actively made the film look worse.
It seems so, yeah. It forced people who wanted to see it opening weekend into this technically compromised, uncomfortable viewing. Spectacle over substance, perhaps? Or at least spectacle over basic comfort and visual fidelity.
It definitely raises questions about pushing new tech before it's, well, ready for prime time. Or comfortable.
Absolutely. Should the tech drive the experience or support the art? This review suggests the balance was off here.
Okay, let's pivot from the tech headaches to the actual inhabitants of Middle-earth, the cast. Now, here there seems to be some real agreement.
Oh, definitely. Especially about the lead. Martin Freeman as young Bilbo Baggins. Universally praised.
Called an inspired choice, right?
Absolutely. His performance just hits the nail on the head. He gets that fussy, reluctant Hobbit nature, but also the bravery that starts to peek through.
The review mentions he wears his heart on his face.
Yeah, meaning he handles both the light comedy, like worrying about his plates during the dwarf invasion of his home, and the heavier stuff really well. That moment deciding Gollum's fate, for example. Really strong performance.
Okay, speaking of Gollum, that scene, Riddles in the Dark, is iconic. But the review had issues here, too.
It did, yeah. While the scene itself is great, the reviewer found Andy Serkis's vocal performance difficult to understand.
How so?
They compared it to Bane levels of unintelligibility.
Wow, okay. That's a specific and not very flattering comparison. Bane from The Dark Knight Rises.
Exactly, meaning the throaty gurgling effects were so thick that the actual words got lost. The reviewer literally had to look up the riddles afterwards to figure out what was said.
That's kind of a problem for a scene called Riddles in the Dark. The whole point is the wordplay.
Precisely. If you lose the clarity of the riddles, you lose a lot of the tension and the cleverness of that entire sequence. It's a major part of the book.
Right. Then we have the dwarves.
Yeah.
All. 15 of them.
15 named dwarves, plus Gandalf, plus Bilbo. It's a crowd.
How on earth do you develop 15 characters in a film that already feels too long and exposition heavy?
Well, the short answer is you don't, really. The review acknowledges that most are just making up the numbers. Background characters, essentially.
But they did try to distinguish them.
Visually, yes. The film did a good job making them all look unique, different beards, hair, builds. And the main ones, Thorin, played by Richard Armitage, and Balin, Ken Stott, get the most development. They feel like actual characters.
And the accents, I remember noticing that.
Yeah, interesting point in the review. The wide range of British Isles accents, Scottish, Irish, various English ones. The actors just use their own, which gives the company a kind of diverse, almost working class feel.
Like a proper band of exiles. But some were just there for laughs.
Seems so. The review describes some as falling into archetypes. Fat, loud, rude, stupid, or camp.
Necessary comic relief, maybe, given the runtime?
Possibly.
Yeah.
It speaks to that challenge of balancing the original Hobbit lightness with the heavier LOTR tone they were aiming for. These broader characters might break up the seriousness, but maybe feel a bit shallow.
We also get the big guns back, the Guardians of Middle-earth, that White Council scene, Elrond, Galadriel, Saruman, Gandalf.
Yep, discussing the dwarf's quest and the rising shadow in the east. But the review found this scene overlong.
Why overlong? Seems important.
The critique wasn't really about the acting Cate Blanchett, as Galberto's called, mesmerizing, as usual. It was more about the writing and the scene's purpose.
Which was?
Well, it felt like it was serving the next story, you know? Setting up the necromancer plot, the return of Sauron stuff that's crucial for Lord of the Rings, but maybe jars with the simpler quest narrative of The Hobbit. It felt like a detour for franchise setup.
Shifting the tone quite dramatically.
Exactly. But then, interestingly, there's a character addition that did work, according to the review. Radagast the Brown.
Sylvester McCoy.
For the rabbits?
The rabbit-drawn sled, yes. Yeah. Radagast is barely a footnote in the books, but his inclusion here was welcomed. McCoy got high praise.
What did they like about him? He made Radagast comedic, pitiful, and wondrous all in one go. Healing the sick hedgehog, the slightly bonkers energy, the excellent sled. It felt eccentric and warm, and actually fit the Hobbit's slightly whimsical tone. Unlike maybe the White Council scene, it felt organic.
Okay, so summing things up, final assessment time. What about the action, the music?
The action felt familiar, a bit too much like Lord of the Rings, maybe, and even repetitive within the film itself. The review mentioned sometimes there was too much going on to appreciate the skill involved, kind of a sensory overload.
And the score, Howard Shore returned.
Also familiar, naturally. But the reviewer really liked the songs within the film, the dwarves singing, enough to actually buy the soundtrack.
Oh, interesting. So the music hit the mark, especially the diegetic stuff.
It seems like the songs provided some needed emotional weight and distinctiveness, where maybe the action and structure felt a bit recycled.
And were there any lingering technical issues mentioned, beyond the 3D disaster?
Yes, a couple of small, but for fans, quite significant visual effects errors. Things that might need a fix later.
Like what?
Specifically, Bilbo's sword, Sting. It often didn't glow blue when orcs were nearby, which is its whole thing.
Oh, yeah, that's basic lore.
Right. And Orcrist, Thorin's elven blade, should also have glowed. The reviewer said it should have been lit up like a blue lightsaber.
Missing details like that? It suggests maybe things were rushed in post-production, or just an oversight?
Could be either. But for dedicated fans, those details matter. It breaks the internal logic, the established rules of Middle-earth. It feels like prioritizing the big spectacle over getting the fundamentals right.
So after all that, the length, the padding, the painful 3D, the muffled Gollum, the non-glowing swords, what was the final verdict?
Surprisingly positive in a way. Despite all the critiques, the film was ultimately called an excellent film that is a bit too long and could do with re-editing.
Huh. So still excellent underneath the issues.
Apparently so. The reviewer was left ready for part 2. It seems the strengths, particularly Martin Freeman's Bilbo and maybe McCoy's Radagast, were enough to carry it through the flaws.
So it really highlights that tension, doesn't it, between truly inspired performances and fantastic source material on one side.
And on the other, the, let's say, commercial pressures that led to stretching one book into 3 films, padding it out, and even letting technical issues hamper the viewing experience.
Which brings us to that final thought for you, our listeners, to chew on.
If you take a story that began life as a simple, beloved bedtime tale, and you expand it massively, seemingly for commercial reasons, forcing in darker themes, political intrigue, loads of exposition.
Can even truly brilliant casting and potentially beautiful cinematography, assuming you watch it in 2D, fully overcome the sheer narrative drag that comes from all that padding needed to justify 3 films?
Was that decision to go for 3 films ultimately serving the story, or something else? Something to think about next time you revisit Middle-earth.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.